was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Belvidere Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted with the Star Ledger and the Express Times and submitted to the town clerk of the town of Belvidere on June 2nd, 2021. Due to COVID-19, masks will be required at this meeting when proper social distancing cannot be maintained. Board members will be able to participate in the meeting virtually via conference call, and the meeting will be live streamed for members of the public that do not wish to attend in person. Public not in attendance can email comments to be read during public participation to rtjalma@belvideresd.org. Public comment on agenda items needs to be received by 7 p.m. and have public participation number 1 in the subject line. I need a motion and a second for pursuant to bylaw 9310 to suspend certain meeting procedures as described in the notice of meeting, specifically to authorize board members to participate in the meeting virtually via conference call if desired. Need a motion and a second.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, it's time for the flag salute. Roll call, Shell.
Plum? Mrs. Costantino?
Here.
Dr. Zeppeth? Here. Duckworth? Here. Barr? Here. Pell? Scott?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Steffen?
Here.
Ty? Williams?
Here.
White?
Okay, it's time for public participation. Does anybody in the audience have any public participation? No? Shelley, you have any emails?
Please accept this letter of resignation effective June 30th. I thank you and the Board of Education for allowing me the opportunity to serve Belvidere in this capacity. I believe the high school has developed tremendously during our time together. Belvidere High School has been a tremendous growth opportunity for me and has helped me shape and develop my leadership skills. I was proud to represent this school and community. I wish you the best of luck as you lead the school and the district forward. Go Cedars. Dr. Lazara.
Did everybody hear that? You gotta read it again, Shell.
Got to read it again.
Please accept this letter of resignation effective June 30th. I thank you and the Board of Education for allowing me the opportunity to serve Belvidere in this capacity. I believe the high school has developed tremendously during our time together. Belvidere High School has been a tremendous growth opportunity for me and has helped me shape and develop my leadership skills. I was proud to represent this school and community. I wish you the best of luck as you lead the school and the district forward. Go Cedars. From Dr. Lazara.
And on behalf of the board, we're sorry to see you go, but good luck in your new district and your endeavors.
Very sweet.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. Do you have any other correspondence? Do you have any other correspondence, Shell? I have a letter from the Hope Area Chamber of Commerce, which it didn't come in through the right channels for correspondence, but I think that it should be read because they have an opinion. It's kind of late, but it says, I am writing to request that you begin the academic school year in the fall 2021 after September 6th. As you know, Labor Day is culturally referred to as the end of summer and is vital to the ecotourism and tourism industries of the county, similar to the shopping holiday known as Black Friday. Labor Day is the significant economic factor of Warren County's businesses. Peter Franchut, controller of Maryland, recently demonstrated the economic value of starting schools after Labor Day, as well as the benefits to families and the overall community. The Let Summer Be Summer movement are emerging throughout the nation, and I hope your leadership might take us to the forefront of the push to return summer vacation to families. Additionally, students and family needs this year are no exception. COVID has put us all into adjournment mode. After over a year of virtual education, students need that summer vacation, and districts starting later can avoid the initial COVID surge that is bound to happen with the return to in-person learning. The more time for vaccinations to become available and realized by our teens, the better it is for our entire community. After a year of isolation, school and work are both beneficial to students. In recent years, school-age kids have been overscheduled, where work has often been seen as not as important. Here's what the research says that teenagers lose when they do not work. They realize a diminished ability to manage money later in life, to understand what work experience means so that they do not expect to be the manager after a day's experience. Teens who work engage in less risky behaviors and illicit drug and especially important now, they build skills for life and work like cooperation, patience, and work ethic, and the ability to work with others in teams. I realize that we try to simulate these experiences in the classroom. I might argue those simulations are not necessary when there is a business community and an educational community that can work together for the common good and the benefit of our children in real-world experiences. Finally, I cannot stress enough the role that business plays in our community. The rate of tax for businesses surpasses those of residential constitutes in supporting our educational institutions. And I am asking as a business leader that you do what is within your power to help us be successful so we can financially continue to support your vital and important mission. For years, we have asked our districts to support our needs in this way. I am hopeful after all the turmoil of the past year and its impact on students and businesses that you can see now how decisions mutually affect our families, students, and businesses. Thank you in advance for your cooperation, Christopher Mayer, President, Hope Area Chamber of Commerce. That's it for correspondence, right? Okay, so can I get a motion and a second for some personnel items 1 through 2A? There's an add-on of 2A.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussions, comments, questions? Bill, roll call?
Mr. Blum? Costantino?
Yes.
Dr. Zeppeth?
Yes.
Duckworth?
Yes.
Mr. LeBar? Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Steffen?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Okay, we have one other on education, item 3. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second, somebody?
Second.
Any questions or comments on the state return to in-person instruction plan for September?
Just real quick there, keep in mind, we can update that plan as needed. So what you see today is probably not what will be in effect come September 1st.
Good. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Okay.
Executive after.
So we have 2 things left on our agenda. One is Kathy Hallowell is here to do a training workshop with us on how to improve our communications. And we're going to have to go to executive session to discuss some personnel issue. We'll do Kathy first so that she doesn't have to stay for that and wait for us to come out of exec. So we'll do Kathy and then we'll go to exec at the end. So Kathy, welcome.
I wanted to talk to you all about best practices for board communication because it's not as easy as it might seem until you get into the thick of it, right? But also, it's not just about me talking, it's about us talking together and you talking among yourselves and coming to decisions on how you're going to communicate because different boards do it differently. And that's fine. It's perfectly legitimate in most cases, but what's important is that we all know what we're walking into so we know what the rules are, so we know how to harness, you know, what we've set for ourselves to help our work, to help elevate our work. And let's see. My first slide. Okay, so and it's hot, and you know, it's time that you need to spend doing this. So why bother, right? Honestly, I mean, you come out to board meetings enough, but I found this that really resonated with me a while ago. This is from the Center for Management and Organization Effectiveness, and it talks about why teamwork is important. And it's interesting, on a board of education, you have a number of different personalities, but really the board should be working as one, right? And that's what teamwork really is when it's optimal. So in all honesty, I wanted to share this with you, that there are many types of work groups and teams and organizations, but few function at peak levels. And unfortunately, not all groups exhibit teamwork. I see it all the time. I'm part of a few teams that don't exactly exhibit teamwork either on occasion. But the teams that are truly engaged and committed to a clear purpose and have a deep sense of responsibility are an unbeatable force. And I've also seen that too, and I've seen that with boards of education. So that's really gratifying in my work. And let me see. Yep. Okay. Next slide. And so how do we get there? What's the heart of teamwork? Well, in mine and my colleagues' opinion, it's really all starts and ends with and is undergirded by communication. If you don't have optimal communication, the team is not going to get to that level, right? The level of the big, powerful wave that can withstand anything, that can sweep up any kind of obstacles in its path. And this graphic is also for the CMOE, but you kind of say, and I'll distribute this, so we're not going to go through all of it, but it starts with communication. It starts with communication between all of us. And that leads to understanding, which leads to respect, which leads to trust, which leads to high performance results. And it sounds very corny, but I've seen this happen. This is actually a very, very true graphic here. So let's see. Oh. All right, I think I've got it. And why do you do it? You do it for your kids, right? That's why you're here. That's why you're serving. That's why we're sitting in this hot room and we're going to start talking about something that sounds as boring as communication. What I also would like to distribute for all of you is something that I found years ago from a couple of years ago from Frank Sonnenberg. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he's pretty terrific, and he had an article about communicating amongst people who disagree. So from that article, there were 10 considerations for building bridges, and I'm not going to read all of these to you, but I do have a copy of the full article that I'll distribute. And basically, it's not rocket science, but it is worth thinking about, and it's about, when you read through these, you'll notice it's about trust, it's about respect for other people, respect for their time, respect for the facts. It's about, not being adversarial, but giving people space and listening to them, and also taking the high road, right? And that's where, you start to see people open up. They feel safe. They feel like they can communicate with you. And it really does enrich your own decision making when you hear other points of view and when you carefully consider what your colleagues are thinking and who benefits. That's your children, right? So it's all about relationships, my boss is always telling me, and she's not far off with that. So that's something to consider that we're not going to walk through. But in a nutshell, in my experience, and probably in yours too, the key to success in communication is really twofold, and that's clarity in expectations and consistency in communications. As long as everybody knows what to expect, if everyone has the same definition of what we're working on and how, and we keep doing what we agreed to do, then most of your work is taken care of, in all honesty. So what I was, and already I'm doing quite a bit of talking, but I am wondering if there's anything before we start jumping into things and filling out paperwork and this and that, what do you think you might have room for improving in your communications with your board? Anyone have any thoughts? Anything that jumps right out at you?
An issue that keeps coming up is communications within committees happens, and then communications to full board, and we can't seem to bridge that gap.
Okay.
So that's an issue that keeps coming up.
Okay. Does that ring true with others on the board? I'm seeing some nods. Okay.
If you remember, Kath, when we had you in here before and we did the board self-evaluation, that was one of the things that we discussed, and I think we've gotten better at it, but that has not gone away, that issue. We need to make another round of improvement.
Well, that's interesting that you say it, because I brought some data on committees, because in all honesty, I love committees. I think the committee system is a great one, but that's where a lot of the trust and communications break down, because everyone, well, not everyone, but on occasion you do have board members who feel like they're not being informed because they're not on a particular committee and they don't know what's going on, and the committee is not sharing its work as robustly as other members of the board would like, right? And that's where we start to have issues. That being said, between a committee of the whole and the committee system with different, tasks among the different committees. I prefer the latter. It doesn't matter to me, but it's a real time saver when it comes to board meetings. If the committee has done all of the legwork, for the board to consider it, that's a fabulous thing. And the other thing I really like about committees is that if you have a particular interest, you can focus your interest, in that committee group, and it does become very rewarding. So this is a little bit dated, this data, but I think it'll resonate with you as I read it. In 2015, we did a survey on different school boards, what kind of structure they used, and the majority of boards used a committee system. Only 12% of the respondents did a committee of the whole, and some used a hybrid. Committee of the whole on particular issues, but maybe a committee for negotiations or finance or this or that. So that's pretty impressive. When we're talking about the type of committees that boards use, these are the most popular ones, of course. Finance, and sometimes I see finance and budget combined. Negotiations, 85% of boards use that. Policy is another big one, and curriculum, right? So those are the biggies, followed by facilities and personnel. And then there's a couple of interesting ones too: STEM committee, technology committee, shared services, and there's a couple boards that actually had a green committee. I've seen some really interesting ones as I go to serve different districts. And most of the boards in the survey tended to use about 4, 5, or 6. It's got a little bouncy box there. 4, 5, or 6 committees in their committee structure. I didn't put this slide up here that says the sweet spot. This came from a presentation from Workshop a few years ago. Personally, I would actually move that thing up a little bit. For me, my sweet spot, I like 3, 4, or 5, because your administration has to go to all these committee meetings. It can get a little arduous as we start getting into, 7, 8, 9, 10 committees or more. And then after a while, it's like, okay, isn't there a better way we can do this? So how many committees do you all have? I'm not even familiar with that, and I'm sorry to say.
Curriculum, personnel, negotiations, finance, policy.
Policy.
That's 5. Then
Liaison.
What was that? Oh, instructional council.
I don't know if I'd call it a committee, because it's,
Sometimes you might have an ad hoc or something like that, or...
we have the instructional council, which is really dictated by the teacher's contract.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I don't know if I'd
So
count that.
5.
It sounds like you have 5.
5.
Right? Sounds like you have 5. Okay. That's not too much. That's pretty good. And you're happy with the amount of committees, or is it, you ever think about combining them or this or that, or?
Yeah, it's not the amount. I think it's the fact that we ran into an issue with, cutting a group of positions. It could fall under personnel. It could fall under curriculum because it was curricular needs, and it fell under finance. And everybody got different bits of the information. And that's when I said, maybe we need to go to a committee of the whole, because things were getting lost in translation.
Oh, I can see where you would think that, right? And I wasn't a part of that or saw that, but based on what you're describing, I could see where that fractured information might have a negative effect on the board. So now, here's the thing about committees. They're not mandated by law, of course. So if you see an issue that's like, this is really better for full board discussion, you can kind of dispense with the committee system for particular issues like that. And that may well be the case next time around. Or just have one committee do the heavy lifting at first, perhaps negotiations or personnel or something like that, and then, kind of roll it out systematically. And then finance gets it, and then curriculum gets it, or whatever order you use. The thing with that, if you don't mind my saying, is it's going to be very methodical, so you need to allot an awful lot of time for something like that. And it also comes in that where communication in between committees and between the board is going to be really critical. Is going to be really critical, as you know, right? As was your experience. You didn't quite have that, it seems, and then maybe things got a little messy, right? So this is all about effective board committees. I'm not going to read all of this to you because you have the system and it seems to be working for you. You'll have a copy of this, and the role of committee leaders, and this is probably worth looking at. But the committee chairs, right, which are appointed by the board president, they need to work with administration, right, pretty closely on setting up the meetings and making sure that that the meetings are conducive and convenient for you. They also lead the discussion on aligning the focus of the committee to the district goals. That's really what the committee chair needs to do. and organize the work of the group, divide responsibilities, decide who's going to take minutes, all of that business, and just kind of facilitate discussions as you go through this is not rocket science. I'm sure your committee leaders are doing this already. But here, communication between the committee and the board can be worth looking at, right? So it is the chair's responsibility to arrange for the committee report to be completed during or following every meeting and to distribute that to the rest of the board so that everybody knows what's on it. In my own practice as a board member, I liked what we did. We would have our meeting and I'd take the minutes. Then I would write them up, share them with the superintendent, say, is this what you heard? Yep, thumbs up. Share it with the committee. Is this what we heard? Yep, thumbs up. And then distribute it to the rest of the board. That worked pretty well. Again, it's very methodical. It's a few steps, but it can be worth it, right? And also in their role as a lead communicator for their committee, between the board and to the board, if there's any kind of problems or rumblings or questions that the committee chair is picking up from the board, it's really their duty to let the superintendent know and the committee know about it in advance. And if there's any other administrators that the committee would like to hear from or that the superintendent believes would be helpful for the committee to talk to, then they're the liaison. And also just keeping the committee on track, setting target dates for completing the work that the board gives them. Because the committees do the work that the board gives them. You can get into trouble, and I did myself, if as a committee chair, by just deciding your committee is going to take something up without vetting it to the rest of the board. So I just want to make sure I say that because I was in that position myself once, and I don't want anyone to repeat that. So how are minutes distributed now? Do you have a system, or is it kind of like each committee does something a little bit different?
They all, after the committee meets, they go through Chris and the committee members, just like you said, thumbs up, and then Chris distributes them to the full board.
Perfect. Well, that's a really good system. But what might be helpful...
That doesn't really happen.
No,
that
I've been sending, maybe I did it wrong, as personnel chair, I've been sending the notes to the board after every meeting. I've been sharing
We
them.
never review them, and which has got us in a few hiccups before where the reviews were not accurate to the conversation. So we have never shared with Chris and then the committee to approve before sending to the full board.
I've seen some and approved them before
It may
sending
have
out. So,
happened
yeah, so
once or
we must
twice,
be doing
but-
it on some and not others.
I'm saying a
Yeah.
consistent procedure is, and then you share everyone.
Right.
But maybe the committee should approve it before too, because
Yeah.
I've seen that, we've gone.
We have, you're
we have-
correct.
Yeah, where I was like, that's not what we talked about at all, so. But that was already shared with the rest of the board, so then that's where the breakdown comes in, because
One of
now
many.
they don't have the full information. And we've never
Okay, so
circled back on that,
we know that that's what we want to establish going forward.
yeah.
So that's what, I just want to know for myself, so share it with you and Chris, and
No, it should be
then,
shared with the full committee. Chris and the full committee.
okay, and then to get everybody else to share from there. Everybody has to okay it first, and then share with everybody else. That's what we're doing from now
Or
on.
give them so much time, because
them
how many
time
times you
frame,
send an
yeah.
email, you get, radio silence on the other end.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a best practice,
Yeah,
absolutely.
48 hours. If you didn't like something, respond within 48 hours,
48 hours.
otherwise it's going out.
Yeah, you make the call, right? And and we have a checklist that we'll go through, and we'll articulate that in pen and ink so everyone knows. But I think you had a contribution or a question?
Bob's got his hand up.
With the board that has work sessions, what would be the role?
It depends on what the objective is for the work session, but typically in a work session, the committee chair will do the committee report at that time, which shouldn't look an awful lot different from the minutes. It may be more succinct because it's a public meeting, you want to keep things efficient, and everyone will have seen those minutes beforehand. But that's pretty much what I would say the role of the committee chair would be. But have you had a different experience in Belvidere? Because there's different ways of approaching it. As long as everyone's good with it, it's probably valid.
No, I'm just curious as to how the work sessions would work.
Bob, could you talk into your mic so that everybody else can hear you?
I heard that one, though. You're just curious as to how the work sessions would work, right? Well, how do they work now, if you don't mind my asking? Do you have work sessions? Okay. I didn't have work sessions either. On my board, we just had a typical board meeting, and at the appointed time, we would do report outs, right, from the different committees. But I do have a few boards that I serve that have these work sessions, and oftentimes there's not agenda items to be voted on. I have one board that does a caucus session before their regular board meeting, and the first half hour or so is just the chairs talking and informing the board about the work of the committee, and everybody asks the questions of the chairs at that point in time, and it works really well for them, and then they move right into their regular board meeting. So I've seen that done too, and that makes sense to me too, and they love it. So, you know, as long as everybody's happy and everyone's getting the same information when they need it, then that's good stuff. You know, there's different ways of doing things, and that's a good thing, you know. What I've distributed to you, because another issue that I've often seen is that it kind of depends on who the chair is and what the minutes are going to look like, right? So this is a template. It's pretty easy to follow. Again, nothing I'm telling you tonight is rocket science, but this is kind of a good, template to use for filling out minutes. You put the name of the committee, who's there, what time you meant, and here in the meat of the document, what are the agenda items that you walked into the meeting with your colleagues that you figured you were going to discuss, and what conclusions you reached. Items under consideration and when you're going to have the next meeting and what you might be considering in the next meeting. Fill that thing out, distribute it to the superintendent and the committee members, get the thumbs up, and then send it on out. So that if you're wondering like how to take minutes, or you're a new committee chair and you're not sure if you're doing it right, if you're following that format, I think that that's a good one, but it doesn't really matter what I think. I'm wondering what you think about. Anyone have any thoughts about this particular template? Is there something missing to it? Is it too thin? Is it not robust enough? Is it too arduous?
Similar to what we use.
It is, yeah.
Good.
I think the problem we have isn't in the format.
No.
I think it's in the meat of the document.
Okay. All right. So tell me what the problem in the meat of the document is. I might be able to guess, but I
Sometimes it
don't
just
want
seems
to.
there's not enough detail in there for all the board members. Okay, I'm at all the committee meetings, so I hear it firsthand, right, so I know. But, for somebody who's not at the meeting, they don't hear it firsthand, and then they're like, wait a minute, I didn't know that. Well, it was in the minutes, but it maybe was in a very abbreviated form, so they didn't understand what it was
Okay.
actually saying, or maybe it wasn't in the minutes, and they didn't say it at all.
Okay. And Chris is nodding. Has that been everyone's experience? I'm seeing some nods. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Now, if you've heard me talk about Robert's rules at workshop or at a county meeting or this or that, I often say that minutes should be very spare, right? They should be what was done, not what was said. But when I talk about that, I'm talking about board meeting minutes, not committee meeting minutes. Committees don't take action. It's all discussion. So it's important to write your minutes that accurately reflect the discussion. So it seems to me, and I know that there's different approaches, but it seems to me that this board wants robust committee minutes. Is that agreed upon? Okay. So yeah, no, I'm grateful for your participation. And I don't mean to neglect the members at home. Is there a way if they have thoughts that they can kind of put them through and? Okay, cool. So they're just listening. Okay, good. I don't want to.
We're good.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. So if taking detailed minutes, you're the chair, and it's not your cup of tea, you don't have to do it. Ask another committee member to do it for you. That's perfectly fine, as long as you ensure that there are minutes being taken. And I think what we've been talking about here kind of underscores how important it is to the board to make sure that those minutes are comprehensive. They don't have to be a novel, of course. They certainly don't have to be a transcript, but they've got to hit the points that you talked about and flesh them out. Is that fair to say?
I think that's a fair statement, yeah.
All right. Okay.
You guys agree?
Yes.
Oh, very good.
I wonder if there's room, I'm just going to bring this up now, but we can move on. But if there's room to combine some committees as well, too, because I think part of the issue I see is that maybe some committees are more driven towards a certain goal without looping the whole master goal in together. And then we could all get on the same page with that, and maybe hearing both sides of the goals for each committee, there's a way to combine a few of them that we could hear a balanced argument on each end within the committees. So there's more discussion going on there. But
I'm confused. Put two committee,
so, I mean, there's just like ways like personnel or curriculum and maybe finance or, I don't know, however, but those certain things go hand in hand in a sense in a conversation. So it makes sense to combine them in certain ways. So I don't know if that's a possibility.
we can do anything we want. I mean, it's up to
Yeah.
us what committees we want. So if we want to make it a finance/facility/curriculum,
Because I think that's where part of our lapse in communication comes in too, where maybe facilities is working towards saving money to get something, and finance is working on a budget, but curriculum is working on an education piece. Like, it just, everyone's focused in a different avenue, and I get that, but maybe there's a way to combine some things so that we could hear a whole bigger picture.
Right, which is why I keep bringing up the committee of the whole. I mean, I think I take decent notes, but I don't mind doing that. I just think that if we move towards the committee of the whole, there would be a lot less questions,
But
you
then,
know?
wasn't that what we were doing before, and we went to committee because there was not enough covered?
I don't-
Before you came on,
Oh, okay.
that's how it was.
and we went back too, because when you're doing a committee of the whole, you're doing it at a public meeting like this. So people don't necessarily feel free to speak their mind in a public session. They want to be able to do it in a closed door with just a few people, and then the committee come to a conclusion and then recommend it to the board. I mean, that's what we had decided at one point.
Okay, and it has to be public because of the number of board members
Correct.
there.
You can still go into executive session. Still parts of it, that you- like in a regular meeting, we can go. So like, for example, one of the topics,
Right.
Right.
and you would probably, in that situation, put personnel as the last item, because you're going to go into executive. That way the public is here, not taking action, then
Right.
you need to stay.
Maybe we do need to do more executive sessions to bring more committees together. I don't know.
Well, you need to talk to your attorney about that, because there's 9 items
right.
why you can
There's
go
only a
in.
certain
There's not a lot, I mean, there's a little, it depends, he's the word on that. So you got to be careful there. I think a participant from home had a comment, am I right? I heard a little blip, okay.
Can I just
Perhaps
ask,
not.
Bob, you were asking about the work session. When you were asking about work session, did you mean like a committee of the whole? What? Yes. And you liked that better when you were,
I'd like to give it a try.
I don't have any experience with it, so.
Well, I have worked with boards that are committee of the whole. Typically, they're smaller boards, like the 5-member boards, How do you do a committee with a 5-member board? You can do it, but it's a little isolating. And they work for different boards, but you have to also realize your board meetings, in my opinion, if you're doing your job as a board member, your board meetings are going to be very long, right? And that also speaks to what you were saying. Some people don't feel comfortable enough to speak up in public, and then you leave there feeling like, if you're not comfortable, if your board is not comfortable having discussions in front of the public, then that's not for you. If your meetings are going to be very, very long, it's probably not for you, just because it's exhausting. It's exhausting. So those are the 2 big things with
A lot of times, too,
committee
you're
of the whole.
talking about personnel people, which means you're going to have to rice
Right.
Yes, you
people
do.
prior to every meeting as well.
Yeah,
I
you
kind
do.
of like that caucus idea, if we're going to keep to the committees. I
could
think
do
maybe
that.
that would be a way to bridge the 2. I don't-
Yeah.
That's exactly what they'll have, their meetings are at 6. At 5:30, they have the committee, half an hour. That way, if there's any discussion, it's happening mostly there. And when you get into the regular meeting, almost the regular meeting go quicker.
Yeah.
So I actually think that's a very good idea, because
Yeah.
then there are a lot of times, there's a lot of different questions that come up. That, maybe Danielle heard it different than I heard it, and then you heard it, and now we're getting to the meeting, and now it becomes more of a, we're all throwing our opinions. So I think that would be, most of us are coming in before every meeting, some committee. We started at 6:30, or we did 45 minutes of just committee reports. And it's not for public comment, it's just the committee reports, and then at 7 o'clock we start the meeting.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that, I think it'd be great.
It works great in Lakeland. Lakeland Regional is a district that they were very frustrated, so one of their district goals one year was to try this out. Board goals, rather, and it worked great, They're all very happy. So that's something for you guys to consider. It sounds like it would really take root here.
So what do? We just get together at, let's say, 6:30 in here with the thing going, have our whole discussions, and then officially start the meeting at 7?
Exactly. Well, you would open the meeting up because it's a quorum, right? So you'd open the meeting up and you'd move through that, and then you'd take a recess, and then you'd come back, do your flag salute and all that other public comment and all that business. I mean, if you want, go to the Lakeland Regional website and look at their meeting minutes is probably a good place to start. If you wanted to talk to someone from the Lakeland board, I'd be happy to, have one. They're great people. I'm sure they'd be pleased to talk to you.
I'm assuming everybody seemed like they were pretty interested in trying this out?
Yes.
I am.
Oh, that's good.
Kathy, do we have to change the way we advertise the meeting? I know this just shows change the way we advertise the meeting now. So now do we need to go back? So like, let's say we have a meeting June 30th. So I assume we'll try June 30th. Is everybody comfortable with that? So we need to now advertise.
For a different starting time, and the agenda to the extent known and all that stuff, but, nothing to it. I mean, you could look at Lakeland's meeting notices just for a little guidance, but I don't think it's going to be any different than what you're used to.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I will send these to you. You will see all of this. But what I want you to, but let's look at accountability to the board before we move on. That the committees send their agenda to all board members, the agenda, so that you know in advance whether or not you're on that committee. And the caucus may be a good place at the end of the caucus to share the agendas out, for the upcoming committee meetings, so everyone knows what's on it, and if they have some kind of viewpoint or this or that they want to express to the committee chair before the committee meets, they can do that. Make sure you have a reporting mechanism, which you do, so everybody thoroughly understands what's going on that committee, okay? I know we just said that, but I want to reiterate it. And just make sure that the work of the committee furthers the work of the board. Don't get caught in a loop like I did. And every once in a while, I think, the caucus system will absolutely lend itself to examining the effectiveness of committees. At this time next year, see how you did. See how you did, okay? That being said, all right, so this is my favorite document. I'm going to share it with you. All right, so this is a document that I use with a lot of boards, and it's always been worthwhile. And it just kind of goes through a few different areas of expectation, right? What the board expects from the superintendent, what the superintendent expects from the board, agenda agreements, all of this stuff. And there's some parts, that are pretty basic, like everybody treating each other with respect and no surprises and all of that. But there's some, honestly, that probably could use a little tweaking. So, and I just want to make sure that you all agree with these communication norms too, and that we're clear on what they mean. So the first one, I'm sure a lot of this is in place already. So the first one, a regular communication from the superintendent every week. Is that how you do it?
I've been trying to do it weekly.
All right. Okay, so the board, and that works for the board, hearing from the superintendent every week. Excellent. And what method do you use, Chris?
It's an email.
Perfect, right, email in there. That's working for everybody? All right, beautiful. So about emergencies, I know you probably have a plan in place. How is that working? How do you notify the board about any kind of student or school or personnel emergency?
I generally send an email.
Okay, and you send that to the full board, or okay.
Full board.
Okay, so the initial message, if there's some kind of an emergent nature, there's an ambulance at the school, there's a fire, this or that, do you typically let the board president know first, dash off a text or this or that, and then later on the board gets to find out about it, or
I try my best to notify everybody at the same time if it's an emergency.
Okay, so, all right, so everybody just kind of jot that down so that is that working for everybody? That works? Okay, perfect, very, very good. All right, so to receive board packets and then supporting documentation, how many days in advance prior to your meeting do you get all your materials?
Send them on Friday for a Wednesday meeting.
Oh, okay, does that work for everybody? That's a long time. That's really impressive. Very good.
That works unless we get to number one. Didn't expect, so. I guess what's difficult about it is getting it Friday afternoon and getting through it and figuring out questions within a reasonable time to get him questions before Wednesday, so.
That, I got to be honest with you, though, that's a lot of lead time.
Yeah,
I rarely
like I said,
see
I don't
that.
know, I know we've
Yeah.
gone back and forth with, sometimes it gets difficult to get things ahead of time, but I don't know how much notice you typically would want, so we get to that point. But like,
Okay.
is 48 hours too much or 24 hours? But I wouldn't know that answer.
When you, as far as, what do you, Can you just give me a quick example, Danielle, so I can give you a better answer?
Oh, I don't know, just random things on an agenda that I had a question about.
You can, anytime before 6 o'clock the night of the meeting.
Oh, okay.
That's one of these little
Questions down
thingy
here.
things that we're
Yeah,
going to go
that's why I
through,
was
right?
curious.
Yeah, I'm pretty much obviously we sometimes have committee, well, though now we'll be doing it differently. You can get me at any time.
Okay.
Okay, so you get these.
Sorry, you can get me at any time.
That's great. I got to tell you, like 5 days lead time, that's
Yeah. Plenty of time
really,
to
you're
read,
spoiled.
digest.
That's but there's no excuse for not reading the packets. There really isn't. That's a lot of lead time. That's a beautiful thing. Okay, you receive your monthly expenditure reports. Number 5 is a big deal that all members will receive the same information from the superintendent and the board president, because everyone is entitled to the same information, right? So so I just want to make note of that. But there are different ways of doing that, and boards have different methods. And one of the things that different boards do differently is when you're asking the superintendent a question, right? And I've seen this happen in other boards, but it doesn't happen everywhere. Sometimes what the superintendent will do, will share the answer with you and then with the full board so that everybody has the same information. Some boards don't need to do that. They don't feel the need. They feel like, it's a private question between the board member and the superintendent. So what works for this board? What have you been doing?
So I think that's one of our big
That is-
questions.
that's
That's one
a
of
big
our big
question.
questions. So our concern always is, so let's say Mrs. Constantino asks me a question, then I send it to the whole board. Are we violating any sunshine laws? Is that considered board activity? So if she says, I don't know, we're going to be voting on tonight Dr. Lazara's resignation. Can you give me more information on that? Now, I don't know that I would feel comfortable sharing that with the whole board in a violation of the sunshine law, but it sounds like that's not necessarily the case.
It's not necessarily the case. One method for attacking that is you field questions, right, and you kind of create a document. So you say, and you send out another kind of information-only email to the board and say, board, here are some of the questions that I received on agenda items over the past few days, and here are my answers for your information only. And never, never, never reply all. So I'm glad that that's not an issue, right? We don't have reply alls here.
So that's where that great.
No reply all. That is so bad. Please don't reply all. Please, 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 please don't reply all. A way of getting around the reply all that I use, because sometimes boards do it to me and I cringe, then I'm in violation of the Open Public Meetings Law. I started just BCCing everybody. So you can't reply all. If you BCC everybody, it just takes the ability away. But I always put for full disclosure on my emails. My boards are sick of looking at it. All in red, I put, please be advised that all 9 members of the ex-Board of Education and the superintendent and the business administrator are BCC'd on this email, just so that everybody knows that it's not just going to you, or it's not that it's going to everybody.
Well, that's helpful, I think. I think that was one of my biggest concerns coming on, because I would just have a general question that I think I wanted everybody to hear, but I didn't know how to get it out. I keep being told not to reply all, so then you go through Chris, and it's a lot on him, too. If everybody has questions, and, I like the idea of you making a doc with, common questions you're hearing, but we would have to get that to you probably by Monday. We can't expect that, Wednesday at 6 o'clock.
Right.
But that isn't something I was wondering, how can I communicate with the whole board then?
That is,
if we can BCC, then.
Yeah, and that worked. But it goes through Chris, right? It goes through Chris. It goes to Chris. Chris creates the document, and at some point you say, okay, I'm going to hit send, and everyone will know up until whatever time, and then everyone will have it. And they'll be armed for the meeting. Now, here's the other thing. You may ask for information that you want the board to know, right? But you may also have a situation where you want the board to discuss something. Those are not necessarily the same things. So if you have something that you want the board to discuss, absolutely, let the board president and the superintendent know that I'm going to want to discuss item A2, right? And then put it out there for discussion. So follow what I'm saying, right? I'm not sure if I'm clear or not. I'm
Not for
so
discussion
hot.
in email, though, for discussion at the board meeting.
You would, yeah.
Yeah, I just, when you said that, I could just picture 500 emails now going out to the entire board.
No,
Let's discuss this meeting.
No, the email goes to the board president and the superintendent. I think it's one of these lines on this document, too. I'm just so hot, I'm probably not being as clear as I normally am. But yes, it goes first to the board president and the superintendent, and let them know, this is what I want to talk about, and just so that there are no surprises. And if there's other information that kind of comes up between that question and the board meeting, you'll be ready for it. You know, that's the most effective way of doing things. Does everybody kind of get what I'm saying? All right, fantastic, okay. So that's kind of a hybrid. I hope we all took notes on that. Board members will treat each other with respect, blah, 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 blah. Superintendent, I mean,
Go back for one quick minute, because I want to make sure.
Sure.
If we're going to have Chris compile all the questions and the answers, he needs to have them by a deadline.
Yeah, I
So
would say
can we set a
Monday.
deadline? Yeah, maybe like Monday, close of business. Chris
48
has
hours
everybody's
before.
questions.
yes, so here we go. If you look under the superintendent expects, number 5, I think that's probably talking about what you're talking about. The board member will actually cross out call and put email the superintendent, and you might want to put NCC the board president, but that's not necessary for just questions. It depends on what your practice is. About agenda items and supporting materials, at least how many days in
I'm going to
advance?
say 2, like, so that's 48
48
hours.
hours.
Possible, I would request, because I work a lot of weekends too. So, I mean, Monday is a day that I tend to dive into it if I haven't been able to.
So
get
we
to
do
it.
close of business on Monday.
I was thinking like
Sometimes
7
I have
o'clock
to
on
do,
Monday.
yeah, like it'd have to be late Monday if it's possible.
Yeah, so why don't we do this? Say, the end of the day, end of the business, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll get the answers out Tuesday morning.
Perfect.
Like
That would be
So that
helpful
way,
for
if
me.
it's, oops, sorry, it's 10 o'clock on, and you still have the chance, but Tuesday, so I'll do weekly update mostly on Fridays. I think I've been good. If I can't get it to you on Friday, then I send an email and say it's coming Sunday or Monday. And then you'll just know that if you have questions, get them to me by Monday, and then I'll respond to them first thing Tuesday morning.
That would be helpful, thank you.
Perfect.
Okay. If there are questions, maybe there won't be,
Sure,
right?
absolutely,
Maybe
sure.
there
Doesn't
won't
always
be.
have to.
Don't feel compelled to like, I got to come up with a question now. If you don't want to ask one, it's okay. Okay, so let's see here. I think we've gone through everything. Committee meetings will follow a format agreed upon by the board and will be distributed by the full board, to the full board. That's number 10 under the first section, blank days following the committee meeting. What will work for you guys? 2 days following the committee meetings, 3 days, 4 days, what works? Any committee chairs have any thoughts?
I've been doing a couple of days. I mean, but there's been one time I needed the week, you know, depending on the week. But I would say no more than a week should go by, for sure. What does everybody else think?
I think the way we scheduled the committee meetings too, that allows you that time too, I think, right, before
Yeah,
the.
because
Right,
we
and
have
trying to keep
committee-
that gap of a
committee, yeah.
week from the meetings until the
And that
actual
we-
board, in case that situation
Right.
arises where you do need a full week.
Yeah.
So it's almost I know it doesn't always work out that way with jumping into meetings and stuff like that, but at least if you have that extra week and it takes a little bit extra time, or maybe there's a bunch of questions or we didn't hear it the same way.
So does a week work, or is that too much? A week max?
You guys, we meet once a month, right? You're full board, so if you're going to have that caucus thing, a week doesn't sound bad to me.
And we
it
have it set up
matters-
the first week, we have committee meetings, the second week, we have committee meetings, the third week, supposed to be nothing, and then the fourth week is the board meeting, so.
So it
if
gives you the week.
Right, if you had a
That's a
second week
beautiful
committee meeting,
system.
Yeah.
Yeah, worst case scenario is you're going to
Works pretty
get the committee meeting notes the Friday before the board meeting, so there's still at least the
Right,
5 days beforehand.
That's very effective. That works beautifully, I think. I think it's going to work really
We made some progress
nice.
since last year, we just haven't gotten all the way
Nice.
there.
That's really good. That's really, really good. Okay. All right. So we've done that first section. So requests for additions to the agenda will be received at least blank days before the meeting, because sometimes a board member will want to add something to the agenda. You set the agenda, but by when would you like to receive a request from someone who wants to offer an item for the agenda? How many days beforehand?
So I think it would be the 5 days, so when we got the full agenda out on that Friday, then everything is out there. I know stuff will come
Okay.
up last, I'm not going to say that we wouldn't throw an ad on but for a discussion item, if you know it ahead of, most of the time, you're going to know before that Friday.
Good. Sound good for everybody? All right, very good. Okay, number 2, the majority rules, basically, board members will be respectful, we get that. I put number 4 in bold. That is such a problem everywhere I go. And I know the people are busy, but the people, and I don't know if this is happening here, I'm not saying it is, but it happens all over the place. The people who go through their packages and are very diligent, they sit next to somebody who just opens the email for the first time right next to them. It breeds resentment. Don't be that person. We did number 5 already. The board will vote to put an item on a future agenda before significant staff time will be expended when preparing the agenda item. That's very important to keep in mind based on what we just talked about. If a board member has something that they want to put on the agenda that's going to be a big initiative and require a lot of research, then you have to keep that in mind. That's why that's on there. All right, the superintendent will be able to weigh in on, scheduling the committee meetings, and the board will be very respectful of your time. You have to run the school district, right? So, and that your evaluation will be done in a timely manner. I put that in no surprises. Everybody good with that section? Any additions to it? Any other concerns? Does that work for you?
Yep.
All right, beautiful. Okay. So I think we just kind of talked about this one, addenda to the agenda. So addendums. Do you have a lot of them? I mean,
You had none.
Something
Yeah,
smaller.
I wouldn't say a lot, but it's rare that we don't have something.
I mean,
Yeah,
official-
we always
Or
have
like today, we
something.
just have the one thing, that's usually one or two
they
things.
pop up every once in a
Yeah.
while. When, when do you advise the board of the addenda?
Usually not until the meeting.
Is that working for
When we get here,
everybody?
it's on our sheets.
Is that okay?
They're usually not
Usually
big
not.
issues, but we
Yeah.
probably, if it's, maybe set a deadline if it's going to be something big, but I would think that something big wouldn't be an addendum.
Well, it notices the second part of that sentence is unless the addendum is of a crucial and emergent nature. I mean, it's sometimes you just got to do it.
Yeah, I don't
But-
think there's issues with the addendum.
Okay, very good. Very good. And I think we kind of talked about number 2, but any board member, typically any board member can ask for an item to be placed on the agenda. Not that it'll happen, depending on, what the agenda item is. And should they notify the board president and the superintendent, or one or the other, or board president, superintendent, board secretary? I mean, how does that work?
I don't know that anybody's ever asked for something to be put on the agenda.
We usually
they
save it
just
for new
might.
business.
Yeah.
We usually just bring it up then.
Okay, so then cross that out. We're not going to do that. We'll do it under new business. And that's working for everybody. That's good.
You guys happy with that? Hold on, let's make sure they're happy with it.
Do you guys use a?
I don't know why.
Yeah.
I'm just the only one. Are there any other members that might want to speak up?
I like hearing you talk. I think it's great.
No, I'm just new. You're getting my perspective. I would like to hear what other.
Everyone's so hot.
I guess they're all okay.
Well, and maybe the committee of the whole wouldn't work for this board so well, right? I mean, it's easier to have discussion in smaller groups, I'm sure. I'm sure your committee meetings are.
I'll just jump in on that real quick. I'm doing as much talking as you, by the way, Ms. Constantine. If it's something that you want for a discussion item that you would like information on, I think it's appropriate to get us, we can start to put under new business different topics. A lot of times with the new business, we're hearing it for the first time, and I think I'm speaking for Shelley, a lot of times we feel like we don't have a good opportunity to answer the question because we're not necessarily prepared. So if it's something that you really want information for, just let us know. We'll put topic, whatever that topic is, and then we can be prepared for it.
That's a great point. And it's more efficient that way, right? Because it's you're taking out a step, You're taking out a step. All right, good. Do you guys use a consent agenda? I'm sorry, I didn't look at your agendas before I came here. So,
Yes.
you do? Okay. All right, so when you pull, so you can pull items for discussion? Is that how it works? If there's an item on the consent agenda that somebody wants to discuss, how do you handle it typically?
As we go through each section,
I
we
don't know
just,
what a consent
Perfect.
agenda is, actually.
Yep.
To tell you the truth. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Which happens in some places. It's insane.
we do each grouping, and then we can have a discussion or ask questions or anything on that grouping.
Yeah, that's fine. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Got it.
That's
Okay.
perfect.
Got it.
But you can, but I want you to know that if you have an item on there that you really want to pull for a separate discussion or a separate vote, you're good with all of that section except for this one, and you want it pulled, or you want a last-ditch effort to try to understand it a little better, maybe change your vote a little bit, then you can do that. So that's what this part is about.
Yeah, any board member can table any item for any reason.
Perfect. And I think we have here, so, and then and then on number 5, pulled items will be discussed before or after the consent agenda vote. How do you typically do it? You vote on the items and then you talk about the pulled one, or vice versa?
Before we vote, we're kind of like,
Okay, so
we might say, hey,
before.
I don't want to vote on this now, I would need more information, or I think we should table this for this reason. We have a little discussion, we table it, and then we.
And then you vote on the whole thing? Perfect.
Right.
Okay, so that's before. Very good. The next section, meeting preparation agreements are really kind of non-negotiables, that you're all prepared, right? And that you let the superintendent know what you're hearing, if they need to know what you're hearing. And, what we've already talked about, time to do research and all that stuff. So during the meeting agreements, most of this is just boilerplate, treat everybody with respect, all of that stuff. But also, you have your agendas available to your public online at the meeting site. You'll follow parliamentary procedure. I looked it up. Your bylaw 9325 says that you'll use parliamentary procedure, so I put that in there. Procedures for public comment are clear and available at the meeting site. That's important, and only the board president will respond to public comment during the meeting. Just you. Sorry, that's your, it's all on you. But,
I have a comment
yes.
in this section, because I think that everyone needs to understand what the board president's responsibilities are. I believe that caused some issue in the last meeting, and that people were thinking that the board president was taking on the whole responsibility of the board and leading the board. But according to what I'm reading here, that is their responsibility.
The board president's responsibility is to run the meeting. You are the chair of the meeting, and honestly, technically, you're the only voice at the meeting unless you call for discussion. And then, one by one, in an orderly fashion, according to Robert's rules, and you're shepherding everybody through Robert's rules, board members speak to you, and issues are discussed, not people. And it's not, if you're going by Robert's rules, it's not Kathy is talking across the room to another board member. We're all talking to you, and that's how discussion is facilitated. And that's your primary job as board president. You have no more authority than any other board member, but you do have the honor of leading these meetings. And public comment, I'm sure, I know you've seen it, can get really
Ugly?
passionate, right? It really can. And I get it, but it's not a free-for-all conversation time. You're not saying the right thing, I wanted to. No, you lead that. You let whoever it is say whatever they're going to say, regardless of content, for however long your bylaw lets them talk. And then you thank them for it. And if there's some kind of a factual, like a quick question like, how are snow days decided, or what's the last day of school, you can ask Chris to answer that. That's perfectly fine, but that's up to you. And so I guess you are a little bit different than any other board meeting member, because you get to make those decisions on the fly, right? If someone is, I'm so hot, I was going to say trash talking another board member, right? You can allow that board member to respond, but they have to wait for you to allow it. That is in Robert's rules. That's tough to follow. I don't know if that happens here. I've seen it happen. But honestly, if you want to keep the temperature down and go by what your bylaws say, Robert's rules, they have to wait until you recognize the board member and say, Kathy, would you like to respond to that? And I may not want to. But does that help?
That does help. I'm just hoping that everybody understands that that's the protocol.
That is a protocol. And if anyone has any questions about this stuff after I leave or during the year or whatever, just call me, because I'm happy to take your call. It's confidential. I don't make a report of who I talk to when, but I have Robert's rules right at my desk, and I'm happy to, talk to you about it. I also have a really great presentation on Robert's rules if you ever want me back. And it's not It's not so darn hot. Okay. But thank you very much, Colleen, for offering that up. So, yeah, we kind of go through all of that stuff. Issues, not people. We flip over to page 3. It's all about being respectful, of course. Again, not rocket science, right? Pretty easy. After board meeting agreements, number 1 is kind of important. In fact, it's not kind of important, it's very important. You have to support the decision of the board. I may have said this to you guys before. You don't have to buy pom-poms around the street if the board votes a way that you personally opposed. But once the majority has spoken, and that is the will of the board, you're on the board, you have to support that decision, or at the very least not undermine it, right? You make your case for a particular voting item at the board meeting. Once it's done, you gave it your best shot, and now you're all in the same boat, right? And you can't try to capsize it. That's not going to work. Okay, and other than that, site visits are kind of important. I don't know if that's an issue here, but sometimes they do become an issue when board members aren't really sure what to do when they're visiting the schools. Because on the one hand, you're here as a parent perhaps, but every time somebody sees you as a board member, you've got that board member label on your forehead. So you have to be mindful of your presence in the school. So we have to follow the same procedures for all visitors. And typically, Chris, do board members check with you or the school principal or anyone in particular if they're visiting campus, like for a particular event, like, I don't know, field day or a science contest?
I don't think that's an issue at all here.
Okay.
I don't think anybody's, one time someone's wanted to come as a board member, and they ran it through me, and that was fine.
Perfect.
But otherwise, that's never been an issue.
I'm
as long
very
as I've been here.
pleased. That's a beautiful thing. Okay, excellent. And so then we will go down to if a board member observes an issue on campus that needs administrative follow-up, this is the last item in that section, number 5. Concerns will be communicated to, just follow the chain of command, right? I just have a blank there in case you have a different procedure. All right, and also let the superintendent know that you've seen what you've seen, but don't expect any follow-up. That's not your job as a board member. You just, as per the Code of Ethics, you have to let the superintendent know, and then you just back away. Any questions on any of that stuff? Okay.
Can we go back to during the meeting agreements?
Sure.
Because personally, there's a couple things that we kind of skipped over that I think is part of our problem.
Oh, well then, by all means, let's talk about it.
Members respectively listening to each other. Sometimes I think we don't always have the most respect for each other. It comes across to me. And the way people are speaking to each other. I mean, there's one on here about board members will model the behaviors expected of students. And I don't always, there's times when I've recently been here and wanted to crawl under my table because I'm thinking it's not the best example that we're setting the way we've been talking to each other or attacks on each other. I personally don't want to be a part of a board that's going to do that to each other.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because then then that's the makings of a really good board member, right? And I'm sorry to hear that, but does anyone else have any other thoughts on that?
I agree with her, and that's why I brought up my point, because I feel that some people were attacking the president because she was following protocols and doing what she was supposed to, and other people felt that she wasn't, but it was more of an attack. So I think that once people realize that that is her role, that I'm hoping that we can move forward and past that point. And if people have questions about the efficacy of how things are done, I think that you said it perfect, that they need to reach out to you as well for some guidance.
I'd be happy to provide it. I mean, I'm a neutral party, and I work in 3 counties. It's not like I'm just laser focused on Belvidere and I have an agenda for Belvidere. I don't. My message is consistent. I'm glad you said what you said, Colleen, and I just want to note, the first step is to know the procedure, right? Is to know That doesn't happen automatically, so that requires a lot of training, it requires a lot of reading, it requires a lot of question asking, right? Sometimes if you have a mentor or something, I'm
You have to
sorry.
hit the screen, otherwise it's going to shut down.
Wow.
Keep it on.
Keep it on, okay. Probably talking too long,
We know
okay.
this from negotiations.
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. But yeah, first of all, like, you can't weigh in and say you're doing Robert's rules all wrong if you don't know Robert's rules, right? That's a little maddening. But sometimes you may have questions or you may be mistaken about it. And as long as you approach it with respect, then that's okay. Then we don't have a situation where you're crawling under your chair or that the community, because people love to, they, I mean, look at reality TV. What my daughter watches is crazy. She loves the fights, right? And you don't want your, like, all of a sudden, like, there's 136 views on a meeting where, board members are treating each other in an abysmal way, because that is going to garner views. I hate to say it. So you do have, that's not a good look for anybody. And what did who's affected by that? Your kids, right? Your kids. That's a big deal. Oh, I'm sorry. So thanks for bringing that up. And thank you very much for actually having the bravery to say something like that in public, right? But I hope that will help everybody to do a
everybody
pulse
makes
check.
mistakes, and maybe we don't follow the right thing at one given time, but I don't think we're fixing it by it being so confrontational.
I'm
in
sure
my
you're not.
opinion.
Yeah. Confrontation doesn't work. And if you don't mind my saying, I attended a couple of board meetings not all that long ago where I know a disruptive board member thought that they were looking like a superhero, right? I can assure you that they did not come across the way they thought they did. If you really do have an issue with something that the board is doing, that's worthy of discussion. Your first thing, honestly, as a board member, I would approach the president away from the dais. Call the president, have a cup of coffee with her, and talk about it. And then if it doesn't advance or, then bring it to the dais, have a discussion. But again, respect is really key. It's really key. If you don't have that, you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to be a circus. I'm sorry to speak so directly.
Oh.
I'm sweating. I'm getting a little candid, but thank you for bringing it up. I mean, if anybody has any other thought, and I'm sorry that I missed that the first time around. It's just so basic, but sometimes the basics, actually all the time, if we don't have the basics down, the whole document's not going to work. Any other thoughts? All right. Okay. Thank you. We went through all of that. I did want to, so maybe we should look a little more closely at board community communications then. We talked about the ambassador part. Now, here's another thing that kind of leads into, I think, probably what you were saying, Colleen. The superintendent is a spokesperson for your district as per policy. The board president is a spokesperson for the board as per policy. So when there is a time when you talk to the media or when there's some kind of president's remarks, those are you make those, but it reflects the will of the board, right? It's not your message, it's the board's message, but you're the one, Mary. Another wonderful thing about being board president is you're the one that carries that message forward to the public. Any questions on that? That's another thing that makes the board president a little bit different than other board members. But it's not an authority thing, it's just one of your duties. Okay, and complaints, okay? Board members are approached by people with their issues. That's just part of the job. That's what happens. It's not what we're supposed to be doing, but people don't understand our role, and that's perfectly fine. It's going to happen. It does happen. You direct them through the appropriate chain of command. That's essential. And then you back off, okay? Any complaints regarding matters of the district that are received by board members shall be communicated promptly to the superintendent for notification purposes only. And when I say that, you tell them what you've heard, and that's that. You don't say, call me back. You don't say, fix this. You don't say, tell me what's happening. Give me more info. You just tell the superintendent, and that is that. And complaints will be processed by the appropriate staff when the superintendent deems that. And the board's the last stop the last stop on the chain of command. Again, and I put this in bold, just so that you know, and I think it should make you feel better. You don't have any authority to solve problems regarding the operation of schools. That's off your shoulders, right? You're goal setters, you're the visionaries, you're not the day-to-day. And you won't be expected to be notified of the status or resolution of complaints, all right? Any questions on that stuff? That's pretty important. Okay, so, and then, following this up, in an emergency, if you can't be reached, who has the authority to make decisions, Chris? Do you kind of delegate that?
Yeah, usually
on the fly?
right to the building principals.
Okay, very good, just so that everybody knows. If you have to get out of the district, would you just tell the board president real fast, or do you stick to the, if there's an emergency where you got to leave campus, how are you going to inform everybody?
If it's an emergency, I'll let the board president know, but I do not let everybody else know.
Okay, yeah, that's fine, that's fine.
I also let the board president and vice president know my weekly schedule since I'm between here and Harmony.
Okay,
So
all right.
kind of get an idea of where we're at.
Very good, as long as everybody understands that. That's just kind of what I'm doing. Okay, and now, here's another thing that I see sometimes being a problem in districts. Oh, I didn't know that the superintendent was taking a personal day-to-day, or this or that. You obviously follow the employment agreement, but is there another method that you use to let the board know that you're taking a personal day or a vacation day, or is that ever an issue here? Or?
Only when I put my weekly schedule to the president and the
Okay.
VP. I put it on there.
Works for everybody? Okay, so everybody understands that? Very nice. Okay. That was a long document and a lot of information, and it was a very hot room in which we had this conversation, and you have executive session. So thank you very much. I know it's not easy, and I know sometimes this is not what you signed up for, right? And you say, this is not what, but you know what? I like this. This is from, you may have seen this at workshop in one of my presentations. It is what you signed up for, all of this stuff. You just didn't realize it. But there's a better way of doing things, and it's worth unearthing those better ways of doing things and keeping at it, because really the focus is on your kids. They're the ones that benefit from it the most. So thank you for being that kayaker. I know it's not easy. I've been there, but it's really important that you do the work that you do in the most effective manner. And just inviting me here to talk and have these conversations and to offer up your thoughts, and to, and that requires commitment and a certain amount of bravery. So thank you very, very much. And I think you all should really appreciate each other, because these are the people who benefit from that. These kids and kids of ages below, under them and above them. So thank you very, very much for doing your part. And if you have any questions, just let me know. I will email you a copy of this presentation so that you have it, Chris, right?
I'll send it out tomorrow.
Yes,
Yep.
Zoom on it, and I will distribute a copy of that article that I mentioned earlier, so you'll have it. And thanks. Any other thoughts or questions before I take my leave?
I'd just like to thank you for coming and going through this with us. I think you've uncovered, we knew, but we uncovered some issues that we're having. I think, and more importantly, we put a corrective action plan in place. So moving forward, maybe we can lessen some of the issues that we're having. If not, alleviate them all.
All right. Good. Thank you. And let me know how that caucus system works.
We're going to try it, so we'll find out
Very
soon.
cool. And if you want to talk to someone from Lakeland, let me know.
I may want to do that, yeah.
Good people. I love them up there. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for
Chris.
coming.
All right.
So what we have next is to go to executive session. Shelley, you have the thing to read?
Pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12 and NJSA 10:4-13, it is recommended that the board move into executive session for the purpose of discussing
Personnel.
personnel. The matter discussed will be disclosed to the public when the reasons for confidentiality no longer exist. The board will reconvene in open session in approximately,
Maybe half hour, I'm thinking. Maybe less, maybe more, I don't know. But we're taking no action.
no action will be taken afterward.
Correct. Thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, we're going to exec. upon the cords. I do that all the time. Yeah. I'm going to hand you the extras. Well, thanks again for coming.
Yes. Good movie.
Hey, Eric, can you just help her with the flash drive? Yeah, yeah.